This is part 2, continuing reading Carl Jung, Liber Primus, the beginning, and I'll back up a little bit. And I thought my mind had gone crazy. From then on, the anxiety toward the terrible event that stood directly before us kept coming back. Once I also saw a sea of blood over the northern land. In the year 1914, in the month of June, at the beginning and the end of the month, and at the beginning of July, I had the same dream 3 times. I was in a foreign land, and suddenly overnight, and right in the middle of summer, a terrible cold descended from space. All seas and rivers were locked in ice. Every green living thing had frozen. I was in a remote English island. It was necessary that I return to my homeland with a fast ship as speedily as possible. I reached home quickly. In my homeland, I found that in the middle of summer a terrible cold had fallen from space, which had turned every living thing into ice. There stood a leaf-bearing but fruitless tree, whose leaves had turned into sweet grapes full of healing juice, through the working of the frost. Let me read that again. That's a good one. There stood a leaf-bearing but fruitless tree, whose leaves had turned into sweet grapes, full of healing juice, through the working of the frost. I picked some grapes and gave them to a great waiting throng. In reality now, it was so. At the time when the Great War broke out between the peoples of Europe, I found myself in Scotland, compelled by the war to choose the fastest ship and the shortest route home. I encountered the colossal cold that froze everything. I met up with the flood, the sea of blood, found my barren tree, whose leaves the frost had transformed into a remedy. And I plucked the ripe fruit and gave it to you, and I do not know what I poured out for you, what bitter, sweet, intoxicating drink, which left on your tongues an aftertaste of blood. Believe me, it is no teaching and no instruction that I give you. On what basis should I presume to teach you? I give you news of the way of this man, but not of your own way. My path is not your path, therefore I cannot teach you. The way is within us, but not in God's, nor in teachings, nor in laws. Within us is the way, the truth, and the life. In us is the way, the truth, and the life. Woe betide those who live by the way of examples. Life is not with them. If you live according to an example, you thus live the life of that example. But who should live your own life if not yourself? So live yourselves. The signposts have fallen, emblazoned trails lie before us. Do not be greedy to gobble up the fruits of foreign fields. Do you know that you yourselves are the fertile acre which bears everything that avails you? Yet who today knows this? Who knows the way to the eternally fruitful climb of the soul? You seek the way through mere appearances and study books and give ear to all kinds of aspiration and opinion. What good is all of that? There is only one way, and that is your way. You seek the path. I warn you away from my own. It can also be the wrong way for you. May each go his own way. I will be no savior, no lawgiver, no master teacher unto you. You are no longer little children. Giving laws, wanting improvements, making things easier has all become wrong and evil. May each one of us seek his own way. The way leads to mutual love and community. Men will come to see and feel the similarity and commonality of their ways. Laws and teachings held in common compel people to solitude so that they may escape the pressure of undesirable contact. But solitude makes people hostile and venomous. Therefore give people dignity, and let each of them stand apart, so that each may find his own fellowship and love it. Power stands against power, contempt against contempt, law against love. Give humanity dignity, and trust that life will find the better way. The one eye of the Godhead is blind, and the one ear of the Godhead is deaf, and the order of its being is crossed by chaos. So be patient with the crippleness of the world, and do not overvalue its consummate beauty. Refinding the soul. When I had the vision of the flood in October of the year 1913, it happened at a time that was significant for me as a man. At that time, in the 40th year of my life, I had achieved everything that I had wished for myself. I had achieved honor, power, wealth, knowledge, and every human happiness. Then my desire for the increase of these trappings ceased, and desire ebbed from me, and horror came over me. And the vision of the flood seized me, and I felt the spirit of the depths, but I did not understand him. Yet he drove me on with his unbearable inner longing, and I said, "My soul, where are you? Do you hear me? I speak, I call you. Are you there? I have returned. I am here again. I have shaken the dust of all the lands from my feet, and I have come to you. I am with you. After long years of wandering, I have come to you again. Should I tell you everything I have experienced and seen and drunk in? Or do you not want to hear about the noise of life in the world? But one thing you must know, the one thing I have learned, is that one must live this life. This life is the way, the long sought-after way to the unfathomable, which we call divine. There is no other way. All other ways are false paths. I found the right way. It led me to you, to my soul. I returned tempered and purified. Do you still know me? How long the separation lasted? Everything has become so different. And how did I find you? How strange my journey was. And what words should I use to tell you that what twisted paths a good star has guided me to you? Give me your hand, my almost forgotten soul. How warm the joy in seeing you again. You long, disavowed soul. Life has led me back to you. Let us thank the life I have lived for all the happy and all the sad hours. For every joy, for every sadness, my soul, my journey should continue with you. I will wander with you and ascend to my solitude. Oh, let's see. Well, I was cooking something, so I had to go turn the rice down. But as we ponder these things, I'm kind of like thrown back to looking at Aleister Crowley and what he wrote about the Book of the Law. Which, by the way, I disagree with the title, because it says in chapter 1 that this book that thou writest is called the Threefold Book of Law. Anyway, we'll get into that another time. But I think Carl Jung is describing the silver key. The only way to gain real inner knowledge is to go in and reflect. For him, he asked for a sign, and he got a dream maybe 4 or 5 times, but when it came 3 times in a row, he definitely paid attention. Here lately I've been telling a lot of my clients, because it's been happening to me, synchronicity, to go by the rule of 3. If something happens in your life once and it's novel, you go, oh, that's interesting, and then you run into this again from another source completely different, oh, that's even more novel. But 3 times is more than novelty. 3 times to me is divine or numinous. And then that term that in the tarot trumps, there's 78 cards. 56 of these cards are elementals: earth, air, fire, and water, or disc, wands, swords, and cups. And there are also 4 court cards, which makes 56. And then there are the 21 numbered trumps. So right there, those 3 is a numinous idea. It raises the energy of what is ordinary into what is the arcane, or the arcane knowledge, or the esoteric. I think that's what dreams and numinous experiences, and sometimes drug journeys. When I was younger, I did probably every drug there was except ayahuasca. I don't think I'm planning on doing that in my age, but you never know. If spirit directs me, I guess it comes to me, I might consider it. But I think that we don't need drugs, we don't need yoga, we don't need anything. We only need solitude and sacrifice, just like he said. I think these things that happened to Carl Jung broke down his barriers, stripped him away. I mean, he had a lot of signs come to him. He had the sign of the Fisher King when his Philemon came to him as the Fisher King in a dream, and the next day out on the Swiss lake he found a dead Fisher King bird. So I think we all get signs. It's just a matter of, do we listen to them? Well, some New Age groupies, and maybe even some Thelemic groupies too, take everything as a sign. But no, I definitely feel like it kind of has to be novel, like Terence McKenna talked about. So here, listen to me carrying on. Yeah, I think his sign for Carl Jung, in my interpretation, if I'm listening to that, if that was a sign to me and I had asked, give me a sign for my work, dreaming about in the midst of desolation and world war, that I would be given the grapes to take from the leaves, from the pages. That second part where I started there, I hope some of you caught that psychic link there to the whole thing about sacrifices laying a foundation. But I was interested in the way he repeated that. I'll post it later on Facebook. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Carl Jung, he was the first to write about the UFO phenomenon and take it credible as a phenomenon. I still haven't read that book. I must read that book. I don't know why it's so hard to get. Maybe the government doesn't want me to read it. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, this goes back to the whole Hermetic studies, and again, why I think the rule of 3 or the Trinity is important. The Godhead, the human, the angelic forces, or we got the Son, the Father, the Holy Ghost, or we got the maiden, and the crone. In the goddess tradition, Trinity, the rule of 3 comes up all over. It's just like right out there in front of us. And kind of like laying a foundation for opening up what's numinous within. And unfortunately, a lot of times it does take pain and suffering and disappointment and getting to the bottom of the barrel to really face ourselves and our approval addictions and our drug addictions and our whatever, our reading book addictions. That's annoying. Anyway, that sometimes it takes to that level, but a lot of artists, I think, have broken through that, and are breaking through that all the time, because art is about redirecting and recreating. It's about taking the refuge of humanity and the waste and turning it into something